where we left off. These next few slides are just advice from other alumni. I got a note from Siobhan Burns with regards to textbooks. She's doing an internship through Long Beach. She's actually doing kind of a distance internship there. And she was like, Dr. Grant told us in 101 to save our books. And she really should have drilled it into us more. And so when you go there, which I'm going on Tuesday, drill into those freshmen to save their books. She's like, I wish I had my clinical nutrition book now, but I never actually bought my book. I always rented my books. And now I wish I had some of them as a reference. So some books might be worth buying and keeping. Or if you can't, if you've already gotten rid of your books, you could always consider getting used copies or older editions when you do start your internship, if you think those would be helpful. Like, for example, the clinical nutrition book, if you're renting it or you've already gotten rid of it, you could just get a later edition or an earlier edition that would help you. When I did my clinical internship, I had a physical book that was all about clinical dietetics, and I used it like all the time. You know, different patient diagnoses and what therapies you should do, etc. So save all your notes. I wish I would have known how much work it took to apply. It does take a lot, but if you do some every day, you won't have to worry about it. And then this, I like this one a lot. I realized that waiting one more year to get the perfect internship may be the best thing. So if you're not ready to match this year, if you're wanting to save money, if you do apply and you don't match, I wouldn't look at that year as a negative. I'd look at it as a positive. And I think Janice Baker, who was here, echoed that sentiment and her story about her daughter and the gap year. So I wouldn't look at that as a negative at all. You're only going to have more experience and more money and be a stronger applicant the next year. So that's a good thing too. You can always also retake classes after you graduate from poly. If you retake classes to improve your DPD GPA, you can put those classes as your DPD GPA, and you don't have to put the other classes that maybe didn't do as well in. So that can help your GPA as well. It's like starting a new job every 2 weeks. The rotations can be pretty fast, so you have to be flexible. Another thing about taking some time off, consult with your fellow classmates, get to know them, network with them, you know, stay friends with them, because they may end up working really cool places or rotating cool places where you're like, well, so-and-so went to a pediatric internship. I would really like to learn more about pediatrics. And then you know their contact, and they might be able to connect you with some of their preceptors who might allow you to go and do your elective there. Most internships have an elective section where you have 2 to 4 weeks where you can choose to do whatever you want within reason. And so if you knew a preceptor in your hometown, you wanted to visit them, or a preceptor at a specialty, you can go visit them. Don't be afraid to rank your program first, even if it's competitive or hard to get into. We'll talk about ranking more, but you should absolutely rank your top choice first, even if you're worried that you won't get in, because it won't affect your other choices negatively at all. That's kind of how the match works. Make sure it's what you want, you know, not your parents or anybody else. Other alumni, so unfortunately it's too late to be a student host for FNC. But if you don't get in this year, you could look into that for next year. For interviews, research the company school and motto, that's a big one, and we'll talk a lot about interviews. You guys are going to start writing personal statement drafts like now-ish, because they're due in a couple weeks. But that's really good to have that draft there, because as you go through your classes and you narrow down your selection, you'll have that as a foundation that you can tweak or change. And then, research rotation locations before deciding where to live in the place that you're going to go, because you want to find out, like, how far are the rotations from the college? Do I have to drive 30 minutes, or do I have to drive an hour, or is there public transportation? You know, am I going to be commuting a long distance? Because if so, if like 80% of my rotations are about 30 minutes away, I might want to live in that place 30 minutes away where I'm close to those rotations, and then just come to the campus once a week or however much I need to for the rotations. And then talk to interns. I'm working on getting lists together. I have the list of this last year's interns, but I'm working on getting a list of the places that Cal Poly students have matched, which I do have that, but then each name of each student who's matched at that place with their email, so that if you want, you can reach out to me. You say, I'm interested in XYZ program, and hopefully within the next week or two, I'll have that list together, and I can email those interns and be like, hey, would you mind talking to a prospective intern? And generally they always say yes, and then you could contact them. So Corinne, this is Corinne Kalnich's advice, if you remember her. She said, I think I talked to over 7 different prior current interns and all the program directors from the internships I applied to. The websites for internships are very broad and tend to say the same things. It's hard to get a good idea of what a program truly is just based off reading a web page. I had great conversations over the phone with a lot of people, which ultimately dictated where I applied to. Everyone is very honest and upfront about a program and if it would be a good fit for your needs. Don't be afraid to call or send an email. If anything, it gets you used to talking about your goals and what you want to learn, which are helpful topics to discuss once interview season comes around. And I think that's really good advice, because a web page is very black and white, but a student's own personal experience or multiple interns' personal experience are going to give you a much broader idea. How many programs to apply to? I almost took some of these slides out because we have whole lectures on them, but it's good to start thinking about it now and narrowing down choices. Dr. Grant generally recommends you apply to 6 programs, but also she says don't apply where you wouldn't go. Like, there's no point applying if you wouldn't go or you can't afford it or it's not up your alley, you know. Only apply where you'd actually go, where you can afford to go. The average dietetic intern applies for, I think it was like 3.2 internships this last year. So if you apply for 6, which she's continually encouraged Cal Poly students to do, your chances of getting in are higher than somebody who applies for only 3. There are costs with each application. The die-cast cost is not that much extra to apply for another one. It's $20 extra per internship, but you'll want to check if programs have their own cost, especially combined like master's DI programs. I've noticed a lot of them, you have to apply separately to the master's program and pay fees maybe associated with that application. And then some schools have their own DI fee, which is, it's kind of a bummer. You wish it would all be in one section, but I know Cal Poly, for example, has a $50 application fee. And so Katie Facilius, she told me that this year they had 36 top people. That's how many they choose to interview out of 100 applicants. She contacted one of them who hadn't paid the fee and said, hey, you're among our top candidates. We'd like to proceed with your application, but you didn't submit the application fee. And the student said, well, I didn't know there was an application fee. And she said, well, there is, you know, and the student decided not to pay it. So even though they were in the top candidates, they didn't pay the application fee. So she took them out of the running for people they were going to interview. It does suck for you guys to have to pay that extra money. But Katie kind of explained it to me and I really got her point. She's like, it costs the program a lot of money to review this many applicants thoroughly. And she actually dictates out like certain parts of the recommendation to all the faculty on campus. So like one year it was my job to read 36 applicants' letters of recommendation, which there's 3 letters of recommendation. So I had to read like over 100 letters of recommendation and rank them. But that was just my one section of the application. Other teachers were looking at the personal statements. She was doing computations for like GPA. Other teachers were looking at resumes, you know, so it takes a really long time. And she's developed this standardized process where she had kind of like a grading rubric for me and she provided me all the materials I need. So it takes up a lot of her time and other people's time. And her position is paid for by the internship fees and the interns who come. So she needs that money to, you know, sustain her being able to work here. So if they have extra fees, make sure you check and make sure you pay them. That being said, this is another reason to start now. If you apply to 6 places, that's going to be $145, right? Just for DICAS. D&D Digital is a $55 fee. So that's $200 just baseline fees. And then if you apply to grad programs or programs with additional fees, you'll need to save more money. So save money now instead of getting like your Starbucks or kombucha or whatever. Put away like $20 a week, $10 a week if you can, and just so you have money for the fees. You don't have to pay them till February 15th. But I don't know a lot of students who have extra money in their bank account, so maybe start saving now, you know, just so you have money and that's not one thing that's prohibiting you from applying later down the road. Grad students are good candidates. They're pretty competitive, and so are your other Cal Poly classmates. I think I talked about this already, but if you do apply for MSDI programs, you don't have to compete against grad students. So you take them out of the equation. Some programs look at grad students as potentially like more responsible, more sure in their decision to be a dietitian, because it usually means they came back to school, you know, things like that. But I would not let that deter you at all. Apply for the program that's best for you. Picking a program, again, I have a whole thing about this, but as you start maybe looking through the Excel, you can look through some of these things. And this actually reminds me, if this will work, I'm trying to do Zoom today. So what else do I have open? Open, recent. Oh, okay. So Anastasia. Anastasia came to my office and she is so well organized. I just wanted to share what she did with you guys. She gave me permission to. But so she's narrowed down the internships and then she's color coded them by things that she likes, things that she doesn't like, places where she needs to ask extra questions, things like that. And so this is actually a really good way to do this. And she has this key down here. So like green is don't like, this kind of blue color is like, applying for sure, not sure. And so now she can narrow down her places. And another good thing about this is when you do apply and you're writing your personal statements and having your interviews, you're going to want to say what you like about the program and why that program is a good fit for you. So I was telling her she's already kind of done this even by highlighting these little things. Like she likes these locations. Is green like or don't like? Green is don't like. Green is don't like. Blue is like. She likes these locations. You know, she likes these concentrations. She likes that management is only 5 months, 5 weeks, you know, all these different things. But I probably wouldn't say I like that your management program is short because I hate management, but you know, she likes that they have sports nutrition, you know, maybe something like that. So she's already kind of prepared herself in this narrowing down process. And then she also taught me another amazing thing, which you guys know how cool my text skills are, so it's not surprising that somebody could teach me a thing or two. But you notice what happens when I move these is that this doesn't move, which makes it much, much easier to look at this big database and keep the internships in check. And so how she did that, I think, did you go to view? I actually did it myself after you left. But you go to view, and then if she highlighted a row, which I'm not going to mess up her thing, but you could do freeze the first column. That's what she did. She highlighted this first column, and she did freeze the first column. And that makes it so that column doesn't move, but the rest of the stuff moves. So that's, to me, this was a really good organized way of kind of starting to look at those types of things. So thank you for letting me share. Other things I would say, yeah, I think we can go to the next one. Open house. I've talked a little bit about these. If they can see you, so if you go in person or if it's a virtual open house where there's like Skype and you can see all the people there, make sure you're dressed appropriately and looking nice. If they can't see you, don't worry. They'll still see your name as a registered attendant, and that can be helpful. And then if you were to get an interview or writing your personal statement, you can say something like that, like, oh, I read a lot about the program online and it seems really interesting to me. So then I attended the virtual open house and it really confirmed that, yes, this is the program right for me. At the virtual open houses or the real open houses, a lot of times they'll have current interns there and they'll do like a question and answer session with current interns. So current interns will tell their own experience. You'll get to meet the directors, etc. So those can be good. Successful seniors. Successful seniors. You guys are all successful seniors because you're all here and you're all going to graduate. These are Dr. Grant's slides that I kind of tweaked. But having a strong GPA, strong written verbal communication skills. If you don't have a strong GPA now, again, you can retake a class. The thing is, if you want to retake an upper division class, it's a lot easier to retake the upper division classes at Poly before you graduate versus try to take those at a community college because they don't tend to transfer well. It's especially upper division classes with labs. So one thing you can consider is putting your graduation out another semester. I know that sounds horrible, but it's a possibility. Even if it's like you walk in spring, but you save one class that you need to graduate for summer, maybe it's a GE or something, because once you've taken all your classes you need to graduate, you can't come back and take more classes unless you enroll in extended education, which is a little harder to get into and can be more expensive. But say you know you're going to need to retake a couple classes. If you put off one of your classes till later, then you can stay and retake them, even if it means staying a little longer after you've like officially graduated. And it is very, very common to retake classes, so don't feel bad if you think you have to or you have already. It's really, really, really common. Especially with like the chemistries, the anatomies, the genetics, those types of classes seem to be really hard and kind of get students. So think about that. Try to get work experience. I think a lot of you guys are doing that. Have a variety of experiences. This is advice from Dr. Grant. You may have to make sacrifices this quarter because this is kind of your last quarter. Not really, but it's kind of your last quarter where you're going to have your complete grades. You're going to have your complete work experience before applying. And so everything that you do this quarter really helps. And so if that means maybe not doing as many personal things or as many like extracurricular things, but just kind of hunkering down and suffering through the quarter so that you get those really good grades this quarter or you get that extra experience, it's probably worth it. That was her advice. I don't disagree at all, but do your best. D&D Digital, we'll talk about more later, but this is where you rank. Like I said, the fee for that is $55. Once you do rank your choices, you have a chance to re-rank them. So you'll rank your choices in February, and then after you submit your applications, hopefully interviews come in, and then you can re-rank your choices in March. So the D&D Digital opens back up again in case you decide that you really wanted to go one place or another, or you got an interview with one place, or you didn't get an interview with one place, and you want to kind of switch your rankings. You can do that. Interviews, I'm just going to mostly skip this, except for just this last part, because we have a whole interview skills. if you don't get an interview, it doesn't mean no internship. Some places only interview the students who are borderline, and they automatically let in their kind of top tier students, but they interview the ones who are borderline to find out like who is more of a match than others. Some internships don't interview at all. And then it doesn't really matter. Like, so for example, Kim Tuckness, she went to Texas A&M. She didn't get an interview the first time. Texas A&M had openings in the second round match. And that was her first choice of internships. But she thought, I didn't get an interview, so maybe they didn't even think I was good enough. You know, they didn't rank me, like I shouldn't reapply because they never interviewed me the first time. Dr. Grant encouraged her to call the director and talk to her about it. And so she did, and she called the director and she said, hey, I really would like to go here, but I was not sure if I should apply because I didn't get an interview the first time. And the director said, oh, I remember you. You were like on the top of my list. Apply. And she applied and she found out she got in like immediately. So you never know what could happen. And sometimes internships get a lot of really good applicants, you know, that there's so many, they just can't interview them all. But it's very likely that all those really good applicants are also applying to other places and might match at those other places. So you just really never know. Other considerations, we talked about email addresses, social media, Facebook. You may want to take the ratings of those to like PG or make them non-public or something just in case, because it's totally not off the ball for a potential internship or even a place of work to try to like Google you or look at your Facebook or look at your Instagram or whatever and just learn more about you. And if it's super crazy, you never know. Start saving. I said that. GPA to get the verification statement. I was able to get in touch with Dr. Grant, and I had a slight misunderstanding with the GPA. The GPA is correct. I thought that it had to be Cal Poly higher ed GPA or, well, higher ed GPA or Cal Poly GPA. It can also be DPD GPA. So that's good news for some of you who maybe didn't do well in some of the other Cal Poly classes, but did well in the DPD courses. So it could also be your DPD GPA as the minimum. So that's really good. And then drugs, I don't think this is going to be a big deal until maybe you go for internships. But some hospitals and government facilities like VA, state hospitals, et cetera, do drug testing. And so you just might want to consider like what's legal in California versus what's legal wherever you end up. You know, it might not be the same. Other considerations, advising does not end. You guys have me for 5 years after you graduate. So, which is why I can seem so busy sometimes, because I'm helping applicants up to 5 years. It's not like at 5 years I won't talk to you ever again, but I will actively track you down for 5 years. Especially if you didn't apply the first year or you didn't get in your first year, I'll try to keep encouraging you to apply or see what you've been doing, you know. So you can always reach out. And then seminars, we talked about FENCI a little bit, the DI Symposium. The CDA is the California Dietetic Association. They don't have theirs until April, so it won't go on your applications, but you could always write something like intend to go to or registered for if you were going to go there, and that could show your interest in kind of learning more and branching out and networking. And then academy membership. Student memberships are cheaper. They do have some scholarships. It is very possible, like what Janice said, that you could get a question like, what's the latest research article you've read? Or what's the latest journal article you've read? Or what are some trends in nutrition and dietetics you've heard about? And so if you have maybe one of those memberships, you might be having better exposure to those things. They could also ask you a question like, tell me about the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Who are they? What do they do? What are their resources? You know, because in theory, they are our professional kind of representatives for the field of nutrition and dietetics. So it's very possible that you could kind of be asked things like that. Other stuff, other things you can do. So you don't have to do an internship, obviously, off the bat. You can go work for yoga goats, surfing goats. Yoga goat? Was it yoga goat? Surfing goat. You go work for surfing goat. That sounded really awesome. Like anywhere though, anywhere there's an internship, you can get experience. The Dairy Council always has lots of internships and they pay. Swanton Pacific Ranch through Cal Poly, they have internships. They also have paid positions as like kitchen managers, food service managers, etc. NACA, I had to look this up this morning. Okay, National Association College and University Food Service. So that's another organization that has both paid and internship positions if you're interested in the food service component. Exos was really cool. This is a company that's involved in human performance, and they have lots of internships available as well as careers. The only thing with them is you have to be a student while doing the internship. So this might be a good time where you could be a student, but maybe taking like an online class or something like that, or having a really low course load so that you could do their internship. And so I looked at them this morning. They have internships in strength and conditioning. They have internships in dietetics. They have internships in physical therapy. They have internships in corporate wellness, internships in community center wellness. They're not paid internships, but they give academic credit. So it would be another way you could get some academic credit if you had elective units. But these are all the different internships they have. And they have them all over the US, but also some in California. So you could search some of their internships. If I would have known about this when I was a student, I probably would have tried to do one of their internships because they're pretty cool. Performance dietitian, corporate wellness, etc. But it's just another kind of opportunity out there for things you can do. Google or Bon Appetit. Has anybody here worked for Google or Bon Appetit? I know I've had other students who've worked for Google or Bon Appetit. Stanford, they do internships in sports nutrition. So I've had students who have gone, does she go? Yeah, so I've had students who have gone, I'll harass you when she comes back, to Stanford to do like a sports dietetic internship over the summer, which is really good. And I think that it gives you room and board, I think. I can't remember. Maybe she didn't. I think Megan went, yeah. Megan McNairn. And I think they gave her some sort of help living there.
Yeah, she lived at
some place. Okay. Tell us about the Stanford sports internship.
I liked it. I don't like the bay.
Oh.
I must say.
Yeah.
The bay's really expensive. It's not paid.
Okay, I'm totally wrong then. I was like, I think they give you some help with something.
They give you a ton of snacks.
Okay.
Which, I mean, they're really good quality snacks, obviously, because they're for their football players, and they care a lot about their football players. But I think what I got most out of it is having people who had just recently gone through their internship process there to kind of give me their story and their feedback on life. But as far as the internship went, I was mostly making smoothies and stuff like that. But there were weekly research projects that we did that were very insightful as far as learning how to present it. Because the person that I was working directly under was really into nutrition education, so she had a ton of tips as far as speaking in front of people and learning to be confident and interactive. And so I thought that was really fun. So they were really nice.
Cool. Yeah. So Stanford has internships. There's lots of places. Just go explore. One of the things some of our past interns or students have said is we don't talk enough about opportunities besides internships. So there are, and this student actually got into an internship, so that's what she ended up doing. But there are a lot of opportunities out there, lots and lots of opportunities, some not paid, some paid, where you can get good experience. And that Also, for those of you who are on the fence, that might help clarify, like, do I really want to go into dietetics? You know, do I want to spend this much more time, money in school, or maybe what type of dietetics I want to do? So those can be really good. And then other things, so taking the DTR exam, when you guys graduate with your verification statement, you can take the DTR exam. Did I talk about this the other day? I feel like I did. But DTRs can make pretty good money. That job went out for Tuscadero State Hospital. It was like $3,000 to $4,000 a month for a DTR position there. You don't have to do an internship to be a DTR, so you can do this in the meantime, and it's really good experience that pays, and it looks good on your application if you don't get in the first time. So that could be good work experience too. You can do a certified dietary manager exam. Lots of hospitals hire dietary managers, and they don't necessarily have to be RDs. And that's like a director role type of position that you can get with your experience as a nutrition student here. You can work for WIC as a degreed nutritionist. If you work for WIC as a degreed nutritionist, Karina, you interned at WIC, right? Yeah, so Karina interned at WIC. She worked with one of our previous students, Maggie Guzman, who is a degreed nutritionist because she graduated with her degree. If you work at WIC for 6 months as a degreed nutritionist, you not only get paid, but then you can be a candidate for their pre-select internship. So they have an internship in the Central Valley where they take 6 interns, but they pre-select them from people who have worked at WIC. And they only offer their internship to the public after they've filled those spots from their current employees. And that internship is only $3,000. So it's a really like cheap internship, and it's cheap to live in the Central Valley too. So it's kind of a perk. And then you kind of have like a foot in as far as if you thought you liked WIC as a career, you have a really good network and connections working with them. So that could be good. I mean, you can work at WIC as a degreed nutritionist for the rest of your lives if you want, and you never have to take the DTR or the RD exam. But if you do become an RD or DTR, you usually have some pay benefit and some more opportunities. You guys have already worked at summer camps. Those can be great. Leadership, there's public policy, networks and task forces that you can join. School food, I know locally Erin Primer is always looking for help. You can get volunteer or paid positions. When I was applying to internships, I worked my last summer as a substitute lunch lady. But I loved the job. Even then, which is quite a while ago, I think I made like 14 or 15 bucks an hour, which is kind of good for this not super hard job. And I got to eat all the food from the salad bar when the students were done, which was usually tons of food because they didn't like to eat the salad bar stuff. So I'd always take home like cottage cheese and beans and carrots and lettuce and like, you know, there's always perks about free lunch, and a lot of these nutrition jobs do have free lunch or free snacks, and it helps. Learn a language or travel, that's a really great experience. And then volunteer, don't stress. Thrive, enjoy your time off, you earned it. And that's the end of that one. So I'll talk about the personal statements, but between me talking about the personal statements and now, do you guys have any questions or things that have come up while listening to that? You guys in shock? You guys can do it. Anything? All right. Okay. Well, we'll move on then. This is a pretty short one. It's only 9 slides, so it's really short. Okay. These are our friends here. So I hacked people's Facebook to get this picture. So if it's on your Facebook, I can find it. No, just kidding. But and I think it's a totally cute picture, which is why I picked it. This was at Arlene Grant Holcomb's RD alumni party, which she's going to try to have every year. I went, and some of our students actually worked for her. She paid them to work her party, and they're like, "This is the best job ever. She's feeding us, and there's alcohol, and we're not doing anything besides shoving grapes in our mouth." And but they have a lot of fun. And I like this picture because one of the parts of the personal statement, or the whole goal of it, is to be yourself and show yourself. And I think this is them being proud of who they are, having fun, enjoying themselves, and showing that they're unique. They can, have a really good time. So that's kind of the point, is to demonstrate what makes you, because a lot of you guys have good grades. A lot of you guys have similar work and volunteer experiences. You all are coming from Cal Poly. On paper, you guys are good candidates from GPAs and all this stuff. But what makes you different than the people sitting next to you or the people applying from other colleges is really what your personal statement comes down to. And some internships rank personal statement as number one. I think most internships rank personal statement pretty high. And that's good, because this gives you an opportunity to show who you are without having to rely on grades or things like that. So it's your formal introduction. I would hope that it wouldn't break your application, but if it's not really good, it definitely wouldn't. It would hurt your application, I wouldn't think it would break it. And I can't really imagine a statement that bad where they're like, "Oh no, we can't have this person," but it's going to really help you. It can add points, to your application, and it's got to differentiate you from others. You can write multiple personal statements for different internships. You can upload more than one to DICAS. And so if you were doing that, you would title them, personal statement, University of Nevada, personal statement, Long Beach, personal statement, VA. Or you can choose to just upload one and have it more tailored to the program you want. Dr. Grant would say try to be as specific as possible and do multiple. But the multiple ones are probably just going to be tweaks versus like whole new statements. It should, these are the goals, get you interested, get you ranked. These are more students being themselves. So I like when students are themselves and just have fun. But make yourself memorable, You guys are all answering the same exact questions, but make yourself memorable, Why do you want to be a dietitian? What have you learned from your time at Cal Poly, from when you started to when you finished, that's maybe changed or shaped your views? Who have you worked with, volunteering or paid, that let you kind of take what you've learned in the classroom and see how this could be a future career for you or something that you want to do? Like I said, at Cal Poly, they rank 36 students, so they're reading 36 letters that are personal statements, and that can be a lot. And so you have to think, like, what's going to make me stand out? And also being honest. You have to be concise because you only have 1,000 words, and it will, like, red line you if you do more than 1,000 words. Like, you'll get that red asterisk saying, "You've exceeded the words, please resubmit." So it's not that it's give or take. It's like you really can't have more than 1,000 words. For your resume, you're gonna upload your resume, and you're also adding more about your work experience in some of those experience columns on DICAS. So you shouldn't just rephrase, "Well, I worked here and I worked here and I worked here and I want to be a dietitian because this was a good experience." If anything, you can take what's not shown on your resume, like a lesson you learned or a patient you interacted with or the sports team, or, I really realized the importance of nutrition to athletics, when working with this football team, or, you know, mothers and children. I know Karina worked at WIC a little bit, and she was like, oh, the children were squirming, and we just, you know, like how difficult that can be, you know, and how parents maybe struggle to get kids to eat well, you know. Yeah, Shelby.
Is it like an opportunity to talk about like non-school things that impacted like what you want to do also?
Yeah.
Like personal situations?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I have some stuff kind of about that, but yeah, absolutely. It's on 2 slides. So yeah, because I'm sure that school hasn't been your only driver to dietetics. You guys all started school as nutrition here before, you know, you must have had some reason for choosing nutrition that was an outside factor before school. You know what I mean? So absolutely. This, it should not be sent in the letter form like, dear so-and-so, I want to attend, you know, VA Los Angeles. I think I'm a good match because blah, 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 blah. It should be more of an essay. Good communication, have it proofread multiple times by different people, even people outside of the field, because if it can make sense to somebody outside of the field in nutrition and dietetics, then it will definitely make sense to somebody in the field of nutrition and dietetics. Parents, friends, roommates, you know, have it proofread, go to the writing lab, make sure there's no spelling errors. Make sure you upload it in whatever form they want you to upload it to, unlike your resumes that half of you guys uploaded as other types of documents. But follow the directions as to how to upload it. And if they want PDF, when you save it as PDF, check that the format looks how it looked in Word or how it looked on whatever program you used to create it, because sometimes PDF kind of changes the formats a little bit. It's not that. Yeah, so yeah, it's got to be truthful. And then answer the questions that are asked. It's best to keep, there's multiple questions, but it's best to keep like one section for each question, like one paragraph or a couple paragraphs for each section versus blending all the answers together. You don't want the reader to have to like hunt for the answers or be like, I'm not really sure they answered this question. Because sometimes you get points on these just for, did they answer the questions that were asked versus did they actually write something interesting and insightful, you know? Sometimes it's, can you actually follow directions? Experiences that have helped you prepare for your career. So I've had students who came from a background of food insecurity, and that really inspired them to be involved in nutrition and dietetics. I've had students who have struggled with weight earlier on, and that has inspired them to become interested in dietetics. I've had students whose family members have had nutrition issues. One of my students that applied for fall match, her father had a bowel resection, and so her whole life, she remembers him having to be on this certain diet. You know, nutrition was just like ingrained into her experience. I've had students experience autoimmune disease and then kind of exploring nutrition because of that, how nutrition can be involved in autoimmune disease. As far as like eating disorders go, if that was your route to nutrition dietetics, it's okay to mention it, but mention it just once and make sure that you have recovered, or you'll say that you'll recover, you say that you're recovered in that letter. And then like on your social media or on your e-portfolio, make sure there's pictures of you looking healthy, because they can look at those things. And Dr. Grant would warn that sometimes going into the dietetic internships and working with people can trigger eating disorders if they haven't been fully recovered. So that's kind of her just like be careful kind of thing. But I wouldn't elaborate and spend so much time about it, just kind of maybe mention it. Things like that. But yeah, definitely like outside experiences, like my family or my personal life or what I observed in the community, etc. What kind of questions do you guys have about that part? Yeah. I do. I do have examples. I was told not to share them. Yeah. So by Dr. Grant, I was told not to share them because she wants it to be your own, you know, and I want it. It's my job now. I want it to be your own. But she specifically told me not to read like personal statements in class. So, yeah, it's got to be your own. I've read a lot of them though. And I think this can be a hard part, you know, is writing it. What are the answers to you? So I'll look and see what I've got and see if I can maybe read a section or something from one of them next time. Yeah.
What are qualities that stood out?
Yeah, qualities that stood out to me. I personally like when somebody has had either like a personal experience or a family experience or friend experience, because I feel like when you've had some sort of experience, living that life is like more valuable to you. Like that kind of like nutrition and dietetics is like you value it more because you've seen it firsthand, or you've seen this happen in your friend, or you've seen this happen in your family. Those stand out to me. If they're poorly written, they stand out to me. Like if there's grammar or the sentences don't flow, that stands out to me. Even though you guys know how bad I am at like spelling and stuff, that kind of stuff really stands out to me. Like if they look like they haven't been proofread a few times. I like it. So it's good to tell stories of how, you know, this idea of theory to practice. So how you've taken what you've learned in school and seen it play out in these experiences you've had, like your work experience or your volunteer experience or your time in Africa, you know. What did you learn in class that you saw there, and how did that impact you and maybe shape your desire to focus one way or another in dietetics or along one path? You don't want to hear people listing like, I'm well organized and I'm punctual and I'm a real go-getter, but then they don't say how, you know? So if they say like, I really enjoy taking initiative. For example, for my sorority, I organized this fundraising project where we raised, you know, $400 and we had 20 different attendees and I coordinated the catering and the whatever, blah, 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 you know, then that's like an example. So you want to hear like examples. What else did I say? You want to see maturity, like that they're really ready to take on this new thing, that they're certain that this is what they want, you know, versus that they feel that they have to do the internship to get to the next step. You want to see that they actually want to do the internship, and probably with that they're really interested in a specific part of what that internship offers. Like, I'm really excited to do this internship because I see that it has this bariatric rotation, and I've really learned about the importance of nutrition for bariatrics in class, and I'm looking forward to seeing that firsthand and working with patients, you know, or kind of like why it's a good fit to them. They've got to stand out and be interesting. Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
For programs that have like a master's with it, I know when I went to the master's here, I like listed classes I was interested in taking to kind of show that I did like research. So is it a combined program?
Yeah.
Is that like a good idea?
Yeah, I think you could list like classes or topics or rotations. I mean, you don't want that to be your whole personal statement, but that could definitely be part of why it's a good match to you. You know, I'm really interested in exercise physiology, and I see that a professor at your school is studying that, Dr. Reeves, you know, and I'd be really interested to pair with that professor and, you know, do future research work. But yeah, you want to show that you've researched their program, and maybe there's something about it, like the professor, the research, the facilities, like, you know, you're a top-ranked hospital and I really can't wait to be using this cutting edge technology. I've heard you do rotations where you have these like dummy patients, you know, they have like these robot patients at Oregon Health and Sciences that Carly was writing about, you know, like I've heard that these rotations are really lifelike and they're really valuable, and I get to work with all the members of the team, you know, things like that. I'll have to think about more and maybe even reread some I have and think about what stands out to me about them. I had one where a student took the whole first paragraph and wrote about a sport that she did, and it was the whole first paragraph, and it was a very good story about this sport that she did, but I was like, wait a minute, we're talking about dietetics here, you know? So I think you have to really keep it on track to make sure that you tell them about yourself, but you don't tell them so much about one area that you forget to incorporate dietetics, you know? That'd be kind of what I would say. For the theory to practice, you know, how case studies in your clinical class maybe prepared you to work with patients in the hospital, or like we've talked about these patients in clinical who are maybe unmotivated, and now as a diet aide in Sierra Vista, when you're reviewing menu options with patients, you've realized that they really struggle when they're on restrictive diets, but we practice using tools and like options to get them to have alternative foods that were really helpful. For like scheduling and management, you guys talk a lot about that in food service class, but maybe in work, you've actually had to pick up a shift when somebody called in sick, or you've had to work a holiday, and that kind of hit home. You realize that like, yeah, like we are a team, and I have to pick up the slack for people when they don't show up, and the patients still have to eat on the holidays, you know, just because it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, like doesn't mean we don't make food for the patients. We all have to be there, you know. Things like that. I'll look through a few though. Other questions. So you'll also be answering this. I had you guys answer the second one, or think about the second one in class today. What are your short-term and long-term goals? Oh yeah. Yeah, don't let that show in your personal statement. Maybe like find a program that gets you excited. Like even if you're not sure you want to apply this year or next, like find one program or one aspect of a program or a few things that like motivate you, that really get you excited, and try to like focus on that when you write. And or I'm thinking like, you're confused. A lot of people are confused. Am I even going to do this or not? There's probably days where you're thinking, yes, I'm going to do this. And there's probably days or hours in the day where you're thinking, no, I'm not going to do this. On those days where you're thinking, yes, I'm going to do this, or those periods where you're like, yeah, I think this is a good idea, work on your personal statement then. On the days where you're like, oh gosh, I don't even know, don't even look at it. Like, don't even think about it, you know, put it away. But try to pick out those days or times where you can feel kind of pumped up about it, and then right then. Also, I think reaching out to some current interns would help, because you might be on the fence and they might have had a similar story and have been like, yeah, you know, I really wasn't sure either, and I just went ahead and applied, and I'm really thankful I did, because we're doing really cool things and I really like it, and I like being with the other interns. Or they might be like, I was on the fence and I applied and now I'm in, and I probably should have not done that. You know, you never know. They're going to be honest. You know, some people aren't ready and they get in and they go anyways, you know, and they're going to be honest, or they're going to be like, I wish I would have taken a year off first, and then I think I really would have been ready, you know, or whatever. But they might have something really positive to say about a program that kind of gets you pumped. Like, okay, this actually sounds more fun in person from this real intern than it sounded off their website or on paper. And I think I could do that, or I think I could find life living in this new city, or, you know, that. Or you might find that you talk to them and you're still not pumped about it at the end. And then that maybe confirms your decision more. you don't have a lot to lose in applying except the money, really. But the application itself can be a good experience. But I would say talk to interns, and they might help. And then, yeah, write on your good days and not your bad days. But that's a good question. Yeah, short-term and long-term goals. So short-term, oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, like don't write it like, Dear Nevada State University, I'm writing this statement to show how much I'm interested in your position. Don't write it like a cover letter for a job. Write it more like an essay about yourself. Yeah.
How do you start it?
A lot of students start it with a story, or actually on one of these upcoming slides, it says you could start it with a phrase or quote if you wanted to. Write it and just call them the patient. Yeah. Yeah, you can call them the patient as long as you don't give out information that will personally identify them. Like you wouldn't say I worked with this 67-year-old white female who was 5'6" and weighed 120 pounds in San Luis Obispo County at French Hospital. Like you wouldn't, but just say like I worked with this patient and it was really meaningful to me. Yeah, I think absolutely that can be a great experience. A totally great thing to write about. Yeah, just don't personally identify them. Yeah.
If you're applying to a program that specializes in eating disorders, would you say still don't really write about?
Well, I think that's a different case. Yeah. Yeah, that's a different case.
Okay.
I think you definitely should incorporate it in that scenario. Because if you didn't, it would be really weird. And they would probably be like, didn't you research what our program was about? Yeah. But if that's not your program specialty, I guess I just would say not to like dwell on that. But you could put that, like if that's something that interests you, you could put that as a long-term goal. Like I'm really interested in working with people with eating disorders, or I'm really interested with working people on a sports team. I'm interested in starting a private practice down the road, or getting an advanced certificate in bariatrics or oncology or nutrition support. Or if you're applying to just a DI program, you might say down the road, I might be interested in my master's degree, or something like that. My long-term goals are always like, I want to learn Spanish, and I never have. I keep trying, but I have not. I failed at my long-term goal. So I guess I keep trying, but yeah.
Have you heard of anybody going to internships?
Puerto Rico?
Have you know anybody that's gone there?
I don't know anybody who's gone there, but they do have one in Puerto Rico. Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, but you could, or I could reach out to the director and say that either you're interested, or I could say I have a student who's interested. Do you have any current interns or past interns who'd be willing to talk to me? That one looks really cool to me though.
Yeah, it's like also really cheap.
Yeah. And it has it's the VA. So I think you get a stipend.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a VA, and it's a VA in Puerto Rico. So I get to go live in Puerto Rico. That's cool. I think you have to speak Spanish though. So if you don't speak Spanish yet, don't apply there. So you're like me, like, oh, I'm going to learn it. No. You might say like lactation consultant, or I want to do like global nutrition, or, work on sustainability projects. Short term is probably like, I'm really interested in clinical nutrition. I'm really interested in community nutrition. Or short term, I would love to pass my RD exam on my first try, or, I'd love to get a job following the internship at WIC or with these types of people, and then further explore my options later. Yeah, so you could say that kind of for short terms. And then strengths and weaknesses. So you guys wrote them all down today, but this is one of your interview questions. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Dr. Grant says it's good enough to write about just one of each. I don't think it would hurt to write about more strengths, but you might not have word space within the statement, to talk so much about your strengths in a good way to talk about them. So when you talk about your strengths, you shouldn't just say, these are my strengths. You have to show this is my strength and here's why, or here's where I utilize this strength to my benefit or to benefit others around me. You want to say like how you use that strength. Weaknesses, you want to talk about a weakness without like incriminating yourself or making yourself sound like a horrible person or, making yourself sound like you have a lot of self-doubt. You want to talk about a weakness kind of as a spectrum of that weakness and like maybe how you've worked on that weakness over time or what you've done to improve that weakness. Like if you're really bad at public speaking, you get really nervous in front of people, maybe you're going to say, I started going to, Dr. Grant has an example of Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a group where you have to get up and speak in front of others. Maybe you went to that. Maybe you volunteered to the nutrition club to do a couple presentations, or maybe you volunteered somewhere to do a presentation, or maybe in a group project in class where 4 people worked on it but only 1 had to speak, you volunteered to be that speaker even though you didn't really want to, but kind of like what did you do to work with yourself on that weakness so that weakness isn't like a disability for you, maybe it's time management. What have you learned since starting school about time management versus where you are now about time management? You've probably learned some realistic things about yourself and how you handle stress or multiple activities or work and school and relationships and volunteering and getting good grades and clubs and, what have you learned? And how are you going to continue to learn, So you always want to tell like a story. If you can say something like not knowing a language, like if English is your second language, maybe that was a struggle for you. If you got a bad grade or got multiple bad grades, you could say, I really struggled in some of these foundational sciences. At the beginning of my education, I just wasn't really clear how these related to nutrition. And that made it difficult for me to put in the time I needed to succeed. However, now that I've taken some of my upper division classes, like metabolism, I realized that biochem really was important and that, chemistry and science are the foundation for everything nutrition. And so I've retaken this class or the other class, or I plan to retake this class or the other class, or I'm going to continue to try to learn about those things that I didn't understand so well initially, because now that I'm in some of these other classes or working with this client or that client, I see how it's kind of the big picture and how those really were important, for me. But that was something I struggled with. Yeah. You don't want to mention so many that they think you're like a train wreck, you know what I mean? But if maybe there's a couple that work together, I think it would be fine to mention a couple. And if you have like a lot that you're thinking about, think of the one with like the best outcome or the one that you're doing the best kind of continuing work on, Because I know I have a lot of weaknesses and some of them I've gotten better at. And so they're kind of growth moments, and some of them I've made no progress at. Maybe I've even gotten worse at, So I definitely wouldn't pick those ones. But write about the ones that you found ways to use as lessons and found ways to learn from. you know, and maybe found ways to avoid in the future, you know, because they want to see that you've grown, and when you get into your internship that you're going to be successful there, and you have kind of these coping and learning skills that you'll be able to handle what comes at you. You know, you're going to be in these different rotations all the time. You're going to have different people all the time. How do you deal with a difficult person, you know, or how do you deal with an unmotivated patient, you know? How do you deal with stress? How do you deal with projects and work and learning new tasks? You know, they want to see that you're able to kind of move forward without it being like a roadblock. So yeah, it's you want to write about them without being too negative, you know. If you had trouble finding a weakness, this will be hard, but you can ask your friends, you can ask your parents, you can ask your siblings. Siblings will probably be most honest with you. You can ask roommates, you could ask teachers, you know, and having that kind of introspection might even be what you write about. Like, you know, I thought my weaknesses were this, but when I actually talked to some of my peers, I found out that my weaknesses were that. And that's something that I really need to work on, is even being more self-aware of these things, you know? Yeah, so you have to write that as part of your personal statement. So you're kind of really opening yourself up to be vulnerable. So in that regards, don't tell them something so personal that, you know, it's gonna be difficult to talk about during your interview or something like that, you know. But think of a more broader weakness. Writing can be a weakness, like written communication, getting the bad grades, failed relationships, you know, roommate engagement, whatever. For me, I know it's like taking on too many things, or sometimes like saying yes to people when I already have like this much on my plate. Trying, you know, managing multitasking, like family relationships, work relationships, things I need to do at work, things I need to do at home, being a mom, you know, attempting to get some exercise, what has to give. So kind of things like that. Strengths. What did you guys, any good strengths you guys thought of? Yeah.
I put good at forming bonds with people.
Good at forming bonds with people. And I think that is a really good strength, because that is exactly what you're going to be doing. You're going to be working with a lot of people. So if you're good at making connections, I guess that's like, is that like the woo from that strengths thing? I had to look that up because I saw it on some of your resume. I'm like, what's woo? Woo is like the ability to like woo people and like make them attracted to you and have kind of their following and their like friendship. Yeah. Make connections with people. But that's a good one. So you would say, like, you would maybe talk about a time where you were thrown into a situation with people you didn't know and how you made those connections, you know? So yeah, I think that that's good. Any other strengths? Was that strengths quest thing free?
It was, yeah.
Did you do it as part of a class?
No, it's, yeah.
Oh, part of orientation. So like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Oh.
I feel like it has changed for me.
Oh. Yeah, so some people put the strength quest results on their resume, where I guess you take a survey, you answer questions, and then it tells you what your 5 strengths are. And so you could look at those strengths if you've done something like that and be like, well, do I agree with what these test results were? And if so, how do I demonstrate that? You know, what have I done? Or which answers did I answer on the test to make it think this way about me? Because those are probably examples of why you are that person. Yeah. That I'm going to have to look into if you haven't done it yet. I'm going to have to look into that.
And I have like on the website the description of what each quality.
Each quality means. That's cool. in case you don't know like what woo is or whatever they're going to say you are. I think there's like 39 strengths or something. There was a lot.
I think if you pay, they can help you like develop them.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I have to look into that, Johnny, because I've never done it either. Yeah.
So it's basically just like an account situation. And they used to like give out the free access codes to first years. I don't think they're doing that anymore, but I don't think it's very expensive to just take it independently. I think if you use any like
That's good advice. Yeah.
and it's
Okay.
really cool.
That's cool. So yeah, that's good advice. What other information do you consider important for the selection decision? This is kind of like, what else do you want us to know about you, and or why are you a good match for this program? You know, like how their program aligns with your goals, you know? Or if there's anything else that you want them to know about you. But, and you can be honest. You could say, you know, this really aligns with my personal goals for growth and my interests and my current experience. I think I would be a really good asset to this program, and I'd like to get involved with research here. And you could say something like, this location is a perfect location to me because I already have somebody I can live with. My grandma lives there, or this is in my hometown, and it would be a great opportunity to be close to home and network with some of the businesses and locations around my home, because I'd eventually like to move back there or something like that, you know? I think that's fine to say. So create the right impression, 10 tips. There's one of these that I need to get rid of, but, and one we already talked about. So an outline, I think, could be a good idea. You know, question 1, question 2, question 3, what are you going to write, and what are your stories? As far as reflecting on your journey, I think this will help you talk about your strengths and weaknesses, but think about you as a freshman or you as a transfer student, and you now, and where have you gone, and like how have you grown in the process, and why are you sure or unsure why you want to apply, but don't tell them the unsure part. But why are you applying now? You know, why is now the good time? You know, what decisions have had to happen? I know a lot of students who started their educations and really weren't sure at all, and maybe didn't get the best grades their first 2 or even 3 years here. And then kind of senior year or maybe junior year, they were like, you know, I really think I want to do this. I'm going to turn those things around. And they started doing really well, or they started getting extra work experiences. So think about kind of where you've come and how you've worked to get to this point. This is Anna Kahn. She'll be at Fancy. She's a former Cal Poly student, and she is a dietitian now, and she's doing her PhD. She was at Arlene's party, so you guys might see her at Fancy. She's a really like loud, happy personality, so you might meet her there. And then Doris, Dr. Durelian. This should not be a letter, so I would change that. It should be a resume, it should be like a story, you know, or a statement, not a letter. Change up your sentence structure, so not like, I am good at organization because blah, 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 blah. I worked with a patient here, blah, 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 blah. I really want to come there, blah, blah, blah. I'm also weak at this, blah, blah, blah. Like, change up your sentences. It helps with the reading and the flow. And then make sure your tenses are the same. I noticed, so on all your resumes, I put feedbacks in the comments section, if you haven't looked at them yet. But I noticed on some people's resumes, they would have the tenses not match. Like, they would put a work experience and then they would say, I did this. But then the next work experience would say, serve 20 people or whatever. So it was like what you did versus like this past tense third person thing, or things like that. So make sure your tenses flow. that you're always either talking, you should talk in the first person for this without saying me, you know. This is Dr. Grant. I don't know that I super agree with this, but, oh, let me do this. This is gonna be cool. Oh, whoa, that was so cool. So maybe go to the thesaurus and type in passion and see what other words are different than passion, you know? And if you do use passion, like show it versus just say it. I'm passionate, I'm passionate, I'm passionate. Like, how are you passionate? What have you done to show your passion? How is this part of your everyday life that it proves you're so passionate? Yeah. Yeah. I would still keep the tense the same. I think it's better to do past tense on a resume, but we're going to have Krista Burke come from Career Services to talk, and she'll have the best answer on that. I personally think it's past tense, like assisted with blah, 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 planned menus for celiac patients, helped with staffing schedules versus present, like helping or, you know, planning. I don't know. That's my opinion, but she'll be the best one to ask. Now, ooh, yes. Yes. Okay, cool. Let's go to the thesaurus. Vary your word structure. Things not obvious from your resume. I think I've talked about that a little bit, but maybe like you're fun, you're creative, you're empathetic, you know, you're good at forming bonds with people. You know, we can't read that on your resume. You're good at taking initiative, things like that. This one, okay. So this is a possible way to start or end with a memorable passage or quote. It probably should be somewhat related to health or nutrition, but it might not be. It might just be motivational. And something maybe that's kept you going these 4 years, you know, or something that continues to help you succeed. Explain any low grades or repeated classes, but also don't take too much time so that your personal statement is all about that. But do notice or do mention it for sure. Yeah.
Is a C considered a low grade?
No, I don't think so. I would say,
Like you're not planning on taking it, right?
yeah, if you're not, I would say like, if you got a lot of C's, maybe say something, especially if they were in similar types of classes. Like say you got all A's and B's in nutrition, but you got all C's in like some of those hard sciences. Maybe say something, but like a one-liner, you know. If you got D's or F's, if you got a lot of C minuses, I would probably say something about that. And hopefully you're saying that you repeated that class or that you plan to repeat that class or, you know, you didn't really realize the importance kind of thing. So, well, you can come talk to me. Like I have, maybe the students who have gotten A's and B's in chemistries and anatomies and biochem and genetics just don't come talk to me. But I have not had a student yet come talk to me who has consistently done well in those classes. Those are the ones that most students are getting C's, C minuses, you know, D's, F's in. So it's pretty common, but so you shouldn't feel like, oh my gosh, I got these grades in these classes. I think in general, nutrition students struggle with that because you sign up for nutrition and you didn't realize you signed up for that much chemistry. You know, a year of chemistry. You're like, wait a minute, not my cup of tea. And chemistry is hard. But maybe talk about like what you learned. Like, hey, I was new to these upper division or chemistry classes, and I didn't realize how much time having 2 labs a week in chemistry while taking nutrition and microbiology would be. You know, I didn't realize the impact of that. You know, it took me a while till I really realized how to schedule appropriately. Yeah. Take ownership for why you have those grades. So maybe it was weaknesses, maybe it was priorities. So take ownership versus making like excuse. Just say, you know, this was a weakness of mine. I dropped the ball on this, but I don't do that anymore, you know? And then, yeah, when you do repeat them, you wanted to understand better, you know, you could really see the importance, etc. In clinical nutrition, if you've already taken it, for the first clinical nutrition, we talk, I know Sydney did, but we talk like all about like acid-base balance and like pH and electrolytes and osmolality. And like, it's really all chemistry stuff, you know? And so I never thought I would need my chemistry, but you do. So things like that. Oh, one more piece of advice, and I think this is my last slide. Okay, so this is Naomi's advice. She's in Colorado at a place called Tri-Counties Internship, Colorado. Have multiple people, especially previous interns, if possible, read and comment on your personal statement. I thought I was fine having just Dr. Grant and a friend look over it for me, but after getting input from 2 RDs, they interned for the programs I applied to, and other friends, I ended up adjusting my personal statement. I thought it was personal and completely me, all wrapped into a concise essay. Scary as it seems, I was writing my personal statement during my most challenging quarters, and honestly, working on my application was my break and stress reliever, kind of, from all my 400 level classes. So you can do it. It is just the draft due here. You have all the way until February 15th to write the final one. One thing I'll say about grad schools, some of them require different and additional types of essays and personal statements. So look at those too, and if those are needed. And that's like all I've got. Oh, proofread and edit. There we go. Yeah.
I was looking at like calculating my GPA, and like for math, it's on there, but I took Calc AB in high school and passed it, so I think
you would just leave it blank.
Okay, so it just is.
That's a good question though. Okay. Yeah, I think you would just leave it blank.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have AP classes that counted for that kind of stuff. Any other questions? You guys can do it. It's so stressful. It's stressful, I know. I'm stressed too. I have chocolate and LaCroix in my office. Not enough for all of you today, but like if you do need to stop by sometimes. Just do something every single week. Oh, do turn in those strengths and weaknesses.